Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Born Podcast, brought to you from our studio here in central Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Nathan Imboden, and on this show, we have the privilege of interviewing some of the best and brightest business owners and leaders of businesses that are right here in our backyard in central Pennsylvania. You can find a full replay of our broadcast on our website at questmont.com/bornpodcast. Also, any social media channel, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and wherever you find your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, do a search for the Born Podcast. Hit that like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of our episodes. And we love being able to champion the message of entrepreneurship and business ownership here on our podcast. And we think there's no better way to do that than hear it straight from the proverbial horse's mouth, the leaders who have helped craft and build those businesses and influence the community in the process. So today we have my good friend Rich Berry, who is one of the founders, owners, and president of 425 Consulting. He's going to do a much better job talking about what they do than I will, but it is an awesome privilege to have you here, not only as a good friend, but a business peer and somebody I look up to very much. So, Rich, thanks for joining the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Nathan. It's good to be here.
So why don't you start with just giving us a little bit of background of who Rich Berry is. So let's learn a little bit about you first.
Okay. Well, I am a reformed CPA, for recovering CPA.
It's better than recovering.
Recovering CPA from Seattle. I was born and raised in Seattle. Was a CPA for a number of years, and then I met a girl from central Pennsylvania in the mid-90s. She spent about 10 years in Seattle with me when I worked at Microsoft in accounting for 10 years. But after we had kids, we decided to quit the grind of Microsoft, the long days, and move to her hometown of Mechanicsburg. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I missed working at Microsoft, but rather than going back to Microsoft, I started a company where I got to do all the same things I did at Microsoft.
Awesome. All right, so your wife's from this area, but I understand if you want to talk, because I know your story a little bit, that there was another draw to central Pennsylvania in terms of some of your kids and some of that. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we first moved here, our kids, I have twins, they were born at 28 weeks. So they were 1 and 2 pounds when they were born. They were very lucky that they survived, actually. They were the only 2 kids in their NICU unit that actually made it out.
Wow.
Which was pretty life-changing. After 3 months in the NICU, and they finally came home, we kind of had our first COVID-like situation where we had to isolate ourselves for about a year because they couldn't fight off infection being that small. I was still working at Microsoft at the time, 10 or 12 hours a day. I'd come home from work when they're that small. They can't eat enough to sleep through the night. So one of us had to be awake 100% of the time during the day. So I'd come home, say hi to Amy, go to bed. I'd stay up till 2 a.m. and then get up at 7, go to work. And we did that for a while. And then I just realized that wasn't sustainable. I was either going to have a heart attack or get divorced or something. And so I came up with the idea of temporarily moving to central PA.
Yeah.
And we did that for the kids so I could spend more time with them. While we were here, it turned out my son is autistic, and we are so lucky. So lucky in central Pennsylvania with the level of support that we have here. My kids went to Cumberland Valley School District.
Okay.
Unbelievably good school district. The support they had for my son being autistic was unbelievable. So we came here temporarily to take a break, but we stayed because the area is great. It was great for our kids. It's been great for our family.
So. I think you've said you've done some research in some other areas, but the resources available here in Central PA is actually pretty top notch.
I think if it's not the first best state, it's in the top 2 or 3 best states for autism support in the country.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know your kids are a big part of your motivation and why you're doing what you're doing and why you're wanting to build what you're building. But talk a little bit about that professional background, because you've mentioned maybe an organization that you at home have heard about, Microsoft. Is that the group?
Yeah, a little software
little,
company.
little software company out there. But you have a background there. So talk a little bit about that journey first, and then we'll get into what led you here to doing 425.
Yeah, so I worked, I left the CPA firm, went to work at that little software company, Microsoft, where I learned that I'm better at systems and processes than debits and credits. And so I was lucky enough there to be responsible for all of the financial processes, systems, and reporting globally for Microsoft. So that means the accounting system. That means closing the books at month end. That means all the reporting. So if you're an investor or you've read any numbers in the newspaper, all that reporting that happens. What I tell people now is if you've seen a number from Microsoft since 1997, it comes out of systems and processes, policies and procedures that my team and I originally designed, develop, manage, and maintain, and still consult on to this day because they're still a client of ours.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's translated then to what you're doing now. But why, when you came back here, you said you missed, so to speak, working for Microsoft, but didn't go back to the corporate world. So what made that pivot going from employment at a CPA firm to employment at a major corporation to starting your own thing?
Yeah. And you know this. I'm going to say it. So when I moved here, I didn't want to get a full-time job again because I moved here because my kids wanted to spend time. I come from a blue-collar family. Blue-collar families, you work. And so I wasn't going to not work. And so I thought at the time, being naive, that having my own business might be easier to manage my time. And so I bought a gym. And I started to catch, it was Curves. I bought a Curves women's gym in Red Lion, Pennsylvania. And honestly, I learned a lot. It was fun. The women there eventually were okay with me being there. And I owned that for about 2 years. But then I just realized that the work itself wasn't something that I was as passionate about as what I had done before. So I ended up selling that one. I ended up buying two.
Okay.
And I ended up selling both of them. But that's where I caught the bug. I just couldn't go back to punching a timesheet anymore.
Yeah. So then you just take all the experience that you learned while you were at Microsoft to what you're doing now. So talk about 425 now specifically in terms of what you guys do, how you help organizations, etc.
Well, a little bit of a background. About 7 years, and you know this, 7 or so years ago, we had to make a pretty fundamental pivot. All of our work was in Seattle. Our clients were in Seattle. In fact, Microsoft was predominantly our only client. We made a pivot 7 years ago because having all the eggs in one basket's not a smart move. And so I didn't have any network here. I'm not from here. I didn't know anybody here besides my immediate neighbors. And so I started to reach out to people. Who do I have to meet? Boy, it's great meeting you. Who do you know that I should talk to? I started to try to create a network. And I was lucky enough to come across, Vistage and Chad Harvey. And that's where I met you originally. But the process of going from zero, our company was established, we were going well, but then 7 years ago, kind of almost went down to zero, having to start over, starting the network. And so where we are today is we have a consulting division, ERP, accounting system, CRM group, and then reporting and analytics and dashboarding and all that. 7 years ago, it was me.
Mm-hmm.
And so moving from just me to the point where I had to create a network, garner some trust, get some, folks to believe in what the company could do,
Mm-hmm.
was a bit of a haul. But now we have people in all those. We have 3 former directors of finance at Microsoft that make up our consulting group, and we just don't have that level of talent just readily available
Right.
in this area.
Yeah.
So that we're very lucky to have them. We have an ERP group. We can do accounting and Microsoft implementations, CRM, and then reporting and analytics, the dashboarding. And so what I have said, and we can edit this out if it's not appropriate. My goal, when I was at Microsoft, I had a lot of national vendors to support me. So I had big budgets. So I worked with Price Waterhouse and Accenture and Ernst & Young and kind of all the national brands. My goal with 425 is to have the same talent as those guys, but being able to deliver it to smaller,
Sure.
medium-sized companies so that they can afford the type of work that Microsoft can.
Right.
So internally, I say I would love to be the Accenture for the small and mid-size market.
Yeah.
And so we have a breadth of services that isn't common at our size.
Yeah. It's needed as well, because oftentimes, because the size of the company that you might be dealing with, they don't have not just the deep pockets, but they don't have the internal bench to be able to understand any of this stuff. So they're probably lagging behind in some of the technological advances anyways. And they really need somebody like you, really could use somebody with all that expertise, but also whether they have it or aren't really willing to spend it.
Yeah.
There are maybe two different sides of the coin, but it's really needed because it helps them be more efficient, understand their business better, grow better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good model.
Yeah. So far, it's been well received. It's a rarity where I come across somebody that ever says, "Yeah, I don't need to talk to you.
Yeah.
We're running perfectly smooth. Nothing needs to change. It's all good." So what we do, most companies like to talk to us.
Yeah.
And the reason that I have these people that work for me that I can't really afford, and I have no right to have this much talent in a small company, but the part of why they work for me is because the level of appreciation that our clients have, because they just don't know what's possible until they start talking to somebody who's done it at a big company before.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun working nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know you back then, but I can tell.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that your days are more joyful than they were.
They are.
back
Yes, they are.
in the 2012, 2013 time frame when that all was going on.
Y2K was not a fun time.
Who would some of your competitors be in this space and what you do? Because it seems like it's fairly, I mean, there's other IT or tech companies, but I don't hear a lot of the stuff that you're talking about doing from some of them. So are there competitors?
Yeah, there's local competitors.
Okay.
There are local competitors. One of the things about what we do is that we sell Microsoft products, and that's a blessing and a curse.
Sure.
The blessing for us is that it's established software. We don't have to sell Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Blessing for the client is if they get tired of us,
Right.
if there's something, they can go find somebody else to do Microsoft work.
Sure.
So there are Microsoft competitors locally. There are other ERP accounting system competitors nationally. There's Sage and Oracle and all those big players, and there's niche competitors. But there are not a lot of competitors at our size in the mid-market that have kind of that breadth.
Yep.
A lot of my competitors are just trying to sell software.
Sure.
Whether it's a square peg in a round hole or not. They just are trying to sell software.
Yep.
And being former accountants and having sat in most of our clients' seats before, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We want to fix a problem. We want to solve a problem as cheaply and quickly as possible. So I think that's probably what differentiates us. But yeah, we have a lot of competitors generically.
Sure. But it sounds like those differentiators, and in particular the size group that you're trying to deal with, which I know you work with some pretty large groups as well. I mean, it's not you're not dealing with just the mom and pop next door, but you're not.
We have, I mean, Microsoft's still a client.
Exactly. Right.
Microsoft's a client. We have multi-billion-dollar clients, and we have clients that are $8 to $10 million in revenue a year. So it's kind of the full range.
So talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges maybe that you see with individuals that you're working with or coming in the door with on some of their maybe their biggest shortcomings and why you end up coming in and are able to help them out.
Yeah. So everybody in the world, even Microsoft, can improve. Everybody that we talk to is breaking what I think is the cardinal rule. Is you should never type the same information more than once. Everybody. And so when we go out and talk to people, what we find is an alarming number of companies are running on Excel. An alarming number of companies are leadership people, highly valuable people that are running companies, or the highly paid people are spending a significant part of their day typing things in spreadsheets. Other highly paid people are acting as automated integration points between two systems. So you have a CRM, you're doing your sales and you're tracking your stuff in your CRM, and then that highly paid accountant person is pulling data out of that CRM, printing it out or exporting it to a spreadsheet, and then they're sitting and spending a big part of their day typing it into accounting. The amount of waste on that is crazy. I actually was talking to a client, potential client, on the call, and part of the advantage of being old, I'm kind of an old guy now, is you can recognize when things are happening.
Sure.
And so in the middle of a sales call, the person was describing to me their process where they exactly that. They had their salespeople manually typing things more than one time. And so I just asked a few pointed questions. Well, how many salespeople? Okay, how many orders or whatever? And I basically calculated that they were wasting $500,000 a year in redundant data entry at one company in one scenario that they happened to bring up during a conversation.
Right.
So that's really where we get them, is because most people don't realize the waste in human cost that they're having, because when you're at a high enough level, things kind of magically happen sometimes, and they try to put on a good face for the boss, and even if they are working until 11 o'clock at night to get that report to hand to the boss, and all the boss sees is, I got my report.
Right.
They don't realize that their controller, their CFO, worked 16 hours for the last week and a half to get that one report to them. So
that clearly spells out the benefits of well-integrated systems that communicate with each other, whether they are completely built in or if you've got, I'm going to try to throw out some terminology if it sounds like it makes sense. If you've got open APIs that you're connecting different softwares to, there's probably still a resistance with people in moving forward with something. Is it cost, time investment? I would imagine in that case. So you did your quick back of the napkin analysis and figured out they're wasting this much money on redundancy. There's going to be an investment then on their part if they do move forward to put this in play, which I can only assume it's going to be a fraction of what that lost productivity is in time. But there may still be oh gosh, well, should I really do this? What are some of those, like, because some of it could be, it feels so obvious, right?
Yeah. Objectively, it stops being objective. Some
That's all you need to say, right?
It stops being objective. People are resistant to change. That's just in our nature.
Yeah.
Something works. I don't really want to upset the apple cart. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
What's behind the reluctance to change is a fear that people think that what we do or what other people can do it too, but they think that this is like some magic box thing that's beyond their capabilities when it's really not. So
right.
One of the things I try to do is simplify things a lot, but it's fear. Sometimes it's cost, and people just can't. Even though you tell them it's $500,000 you're wasting, and we could fix it for a fraction of that.
Yep.
They're still just don't want to spend the money because they don't want to cut the check. They'd rather bleed by 1,000 cuts,
right?
Die by 1,000 cuts rather than just fix the problem.
Yep.
The other thing is once you get somebody on the idea that things can be fixed, then they start to boil the ocean. I was actually on a call recently where their accountants work all the time. They work for weeks to prepare reports for him. And I have a solution for that. I offered up this solution. And then he goes, well, geez, our accounting system is 40 years old. Should we fix that first? So they start to make the problem bigger than that they can consume.
Yeah.
And so our job often is to try to figure out how to create a vision for them to work towards in bite-sized, consumable ways.
Yep. So you compartmentalize issues that you're going to solve to get to maybe a greater end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either fear and resistance, or my gosh, I can see this big future, but then it's too big to do.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
So.
All right. You mentioned a lot of real, I'd say, high-level talent, quality talent you've got. Location-wise, scattered all over the place?
All over the U.S.
All over the U.S.
People
so
here.
Fully remote workforce.
Fully remote.
Everybody works out of their house.
Yep.
Has it always been that way? Or has it predominantly been a fully remote workforce, even when you had such a heavy presence in Seattle and with Microsoft?
Yeah.
Or did COVID completely shift that?
We've always been remote. We used to have physical offices that people could go to. Mm-hmm. We actually had one here locally in Camp Hill. I had one in Redmond, and I realized that I was the only one that went to them when I traveled back and forth. And so we shut those down. We're totally remote. We have people here. We have people in Texas, California, Washington State near Seattle. We have somebody in North Carolina, part-time, and not all of our employees are full-time. One of our employees is a professor at the local university, and he just likes working on fun projects, so he works with us part-time. So we have kind of a range of diverse talent that's pretty fun.
Do you find it's a challenge to create a team feeling or a culture? Sometimes, and I know for our organization, we were used to being in person 24/7 basically. I mean, not 24/7, but we worked together in person 5 days a week, and then COVID hit. And there was definitely, it felt completely different because we were used to peer-to-peer, face-to-face interaction and whatnot, but you never really had that. So what is it like culture-wise, and how do you work to try to make sure that you still have people that feel like they're part of a team, even though there's so much distance and remoteness there?
So a lot of our team had worked together at Microsoft before.
Okay.
So my business partner and I have worked together for 24 years. He'll correct me, I'm sure. But my business partner, Chris Brooks, and I have worked together for 24 years. My consulting team with Kate and Tammy and Mary, I've worked with all of them since, late 90s, early 2000s. So that part of that team, we've known each other for so long that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. You're not having to build a relationship.
Not having to build a relationship. And the fact that we have predominantly two hubs, we have people scattered, but predominantly we have two hubs, Seattle and Central PA. we try to get people together in a social setting, to build the relationships, in at those two hubs, regularly.
Okay.
And then last year, for the first time, we actually brought a whole team to Seattle.
Oh, cool.
For 3 days, and got to work together. We did some work. We had some fun times, but that seems to be enough for us. I mean, we are all technology, accounting, finance people, so we kind of like our space anyway.
Sure.
So it hasn't been a problem so far.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think about a lot.
I was flipping through the channels the other day, and Live Free or Die Hard came on, popped on, and I can only think about all the the programmers and whatnot, and that there's, even though it's a stereotype, there's probably a general theme with some of that where you don't mind that distance, and it actually works well for you guys to be able to do that.
And we go, if we need to, we'll go on site to a client. It's surprising, actually, though, how often clients are really comfortable with us doing work remotely.
Yeah.
Because we have clients from all over the country.
Yep.
I was trying to look the other day. I think we were in 13 or 14 states or something.
Wow.
And it hasn't been a problem. If there's a big meeting, we'll go there. Mm-hmm. If we need to whiteboard and they don't feel comfortable online, we go there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, clients are kind of open to that too, because they don't have to worry about travel time. They don't have to think about entertaining us while we're in town. It works out pretty well.
Yeah. Good. So thinking back through the last, even just 5 years, and the rapid change in technology and advancements and new things, some of them fads, some of the stuff's here to stay. I think back, and we've had a lot of vintage discussions in our groups about some of the stuff related to cryptocurrency or the metaverse, which AI is the big one now.
Yeah,
here to stay.
Yeah.
The I think evolving question is always, well, what's the utility and how is it going to actually be used? But at the end of the day, I think a lot of that boils down to a general idea of being open and needing to invest in technology because it's changing so rapidly. So from your perspective, how would you answer the question of why should I invest in technology? So
AI is here to stay. AI is going to change how all of us work. Mm-hmm. And not all of us. So the people, the folks that are on disconnected, disparate technology, and I don't mean to get technical or anything on here, but these AI tools, there's the benefit of helping you write a better email or writing a better marketing tool. I mean, that everyone will get, right? But the AI that is going to help automate routine tasks.
Yes.
The AI that is going to answer the boss's question when you go, hey, how much money, what was our profit margin on this product line last week? And it will automatically create an analysis for you with graphs and text to explain, the answer to you automatically. The companies that have a more modern infrastructure, more connected modern infrastructure, these AI tools are going to accelerate their efficiency gains to the point where it's not even going to be competitive between a connected company and a company that is on 20 or 30 or 40-year-old technology, or even modern technology but disconnected with the humans doing data gymnastics, typing data into Excel.
Yeah.
It's not even going to be competitive. That's my concern, my genuine concern, is that the companies that see that are just going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And those that don't are going to suffer.
So the question is, how do you get people to understand that and invest in it, move forward and invest in it?
Not everybody's going to see it.
Yeah.
It's up to me, I believe it's up to me to educate a little bit on that, right? And if I'm not able to educate them. Shame on me.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to see it.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the fact of life.
Yeah.
And those that do are going to benefit immensely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just, I mean, anybody with any technology, as long as they're kind of thinking to the future, you don't need to be a technologist. I'm an accountant. I'm not, sitting in my basement typing code all day.
Yeah.
I have a whiteboard and I can think about how pieces of my company need to fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And any business owner with a whiteboard and the ability to think of, I got this process and these things lead to each other. They can sketch out a vision that a technical person can help them achieve that vision.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as I can get business owners to understand that they don't need to be afraid, it doesn't need to be complicated. You can figure it out yourself. And then you can work towards this magical vision where everything's automated over time. It's not like it has to be a big deal.
Right.
5 years will pass and you'll look back and you'll see how far you've come. And you'll go, God, how did we even function back then?
Sure.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
A client that I have that's a friend that you know as well is going through that same exercise, and now they're the poster child for the most efficient company in their industry.
Yeah.
I
think there's another advantage or reason that I could think of, and it's something we've talked in our groups about for the last number of years, and it has to do with the shortfall of human capital now,
yeah.
right? The employment gap, the wave of older individuals who have decided to exit the workforce and aren't coming back, and we don't have younger generations that are filling that yet. There's all sorts of other topics around that, but being able to invest in technology to replace things that humans used to need to do,
Yep.
partly because they're just not there to provide that service anymore.
Yep.
In some cases, it's just almost out of necessity to be able to just
survive
things and survive. Yeah.
So I'm going to tell the story that I often tell. My experience, again, I'm going back to my experience at Microsoft. And all this is public information, so I'm not going to get in trouble. No trade secrets.
Yeah.
So the quarter that I started at Microsoft in 1997, Microsoft was a $2.5 billion revenue company. We were very slow closing the books. It was up to 3 weeks or more to close the books at month end in 1997. And we had about 20 people in the corporate accounting and reporting group that I was in. There was really high turnover because we were working 6 and 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. I watched the sunrise more than once at the time. By the time I left 9 years later, the quarter I left in 2006, Microsoft had grown from about $2.5 billion to about $12.5 billion in that quarter. We closed the books, instead of in 3 weeks, we closed it in 3 days. We had zero turnover in this same group, this corporate accounting group, for 3 years prior. And we still had 20 positions.
Wow.
And so the story that you're talking about with human capital, sometimes it's not getting rid of people, but sometimes it's when you're a growing company, like Microsoft was, we did all the same things that we talk about now. You connect the systems, you automate where you can automate, you have the reporting and the dashboard. Microsoft, I had a big budget at Microsoft.
Yeah.
And software was free. So I could do it 20 years ago.
You wanted. Yeah.
But now software is catching up where the things that we did back then that were so expensive, 2 commas in projects, we can do it at most mid-sized companies can afford.
Yeah.
And you just work towards it over time. And what these things do is exactly like at Microsoft. You can grow 6 times and not have to add any headcount.
Yeah.
Because those tasks, those roles, those positions become vastly more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you'll keep people around longer because they're not working till 10:30 at night.
Right.
They'll have higher job satisfaction. They'll be more innovative. They'll be happier. They'll go home at a more reasonable hour. You'll get more done. The company will be more successful. There's like a whole range of things that come with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well said. And
Yeah.
it's two sides of that employment issue curve.
Yeah.
All right. If you looked back, you are now, I think you started the company in 2014.
Yep.
So it's
10 years.
10 years.
Yep.
If you were to go back, now you're 10 years into it, you go back to 2014 Rich.
Yep.
What do you tell 2014 Rich that you now know, learning over the last 10 years, it would help the next 10 years go better than it could have?
I would have accelerated the things that we're doing now.
Okay.
Back then, I did not have a holistic vision of what I wanted the company to be. I just knew I wanted to be self-employed. And I knew I had a bunch of smart people around me. At the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I wanted to be the Accenture for the small mid-market.
Sure.
So I probably would have spent some more time getting clarity about what I wanted the company to be.
Okay.
And I would have told myself to think more broadly. Because if I put myself, I'm sitting at my desk 10 years ago when I'm filling out the forms to register our company. I just wasn't thinking big enough.
Sure.
And broadly enough. I was too narrowly focused, I think.
Yeah.
So
It's good advice.
And the other thing I would say, honestly, is you got to be patient. In the professional services industry, you know all the things you need to do. You just can't do them all right now.
True.
Right? You
Yes,
know,
we can, Rich.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
we can.
I would like to be Accenture, please.
Yeah, right.
Turn a switch.
Done. Voila.
Yeah.
Just happens.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. I hope to be able to set other people up to do that someday, but it doesn't. So being patient probably would be the second thing.
That's good advice. All right. One more random question.
Okay.
Do you have any mentor or somebody that you really have looked up to that's been an inspiration for you in both business and life?
So I'm going to break that apart into multiple answers. My best business advisor in the last 7 years is Chad Harvey, business-wise. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
That guy's brilliant.
Here, let's do a quick Chad Harvey. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I think work-wise, in my early years, there was a woman named Casey Christie who is a partner at the accounting firm I worked at. She was a mentor. I really looked up to her at Moss Adams over in Seattle. She was a unique, being a woman at that in the early 90s, being a senior partner at an accounting firm, and she was a star. God, she was smart. So early on, I'd say her. I'd say through my Microsoft years, a guy named Taylor Hawes, who was my boss at Microsoft. He's now the CFO of a company called Pacific Dental out in Orange County, California. He's a guy that I learned huge amounts from. And he's a guy I still talk to. I still text him. A lot of the stuff we did at Microsoft came out of his head initially. And so when I find myself doing things now that I know he was imagining, because he was looking at a blank piece of paper in the mid-90s, he was he's very inspirational, smart guy. Personally and personally, you know, I'm really lucky. My parents are awesome. My whole family tree, I'm very, very lucky that my folks are great people. We're great role models, hardworking. I knew both sets of my grandparents. So I'd say family, kind of upward through the family tree. Yes, my mom. Yes, my dad. But again, I was lucky enough to have all my grandparents too. So they were a big part of that for me too.
Awesome.
So
great. It takes a team, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of people. They're going to change. They can change over time. You've already mentioned you had different seasons of life where different people stepped in and played different roles. But I think it's important to know there's always going to be somebody.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, even Microsoft can still improve, and that's rings true for us as individuals, as business leaders, as husbands, parents, whatever it might be. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. We need to be efficient. We need to invest in technology, but people may not know where to turn.
Yeah.
And I think after this interview, the clear answer is 425. I mean,
at least somebody
for sure.
Yeah.
So if anybody is hearing what this is all about and they're saying, yeah, I mean, I really need that, and wants to engage in either more dialogue or learn more about your organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, as with most people, it's through our website at 425consulting.com. There's a contact us form that we just updated where we promise not to spam people and put them on a mailing list forever and send them mails every week. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Everything that goes through that form comes to me directly.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'd say that's the best way to start a conversation.
Awesome. Well, we know it's no secret. Technology is here to stay. Investing in technology is very important, as our discussion revealed, a very important part of the future of all of our businesses. And if we're not investing in it, we're probably going to get left behind at some point in time. And Rich and his team at 425 are a great starting place for that. So if you like what you heard today, go visit their website, check them out. We've had the privilege of knowing each other and getting to know each other for the last couple of years. Rich is a stand-up individual, so you would be getting information from somebody who I highly respect for what that's worth out there in the Born Podcast universe. So, Rich, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been fun sitting across the table from you in this light, rather than when we normally do. But I hope you enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. I survived.
You did. You thrived. You did more than survive. So, everyone at home, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, you can find full replays on our website at questmont.com/Born Podcast. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Born Podcast. Thanks.